Hi, I'm Cristy Fincher. In this segment of our Turned Edge Applique video series, I'm going to demonstrate how to place your applique pieces that have already been turned, like the ones here, onto your background fabric. I will be showing a technique for placing them onto darker backgrounds, like this dark gray here, as well as onto lighter backgrounds, which is more commonly used. The supplies that you'll need today are your finished turned applique pieces for either Liberty Floral or Modern Beauty. This technique is also applicable to any applique designs besides these. Once you learn the technique, you can really use these for any applique designs that you find or ones that you design yourself. You just need to have your finished pieces that are already turned and your background fabric. Your background fabric should be cut an inch to 2 inches larger than you'd like your unfinished block to be. For example, this gray that I'm going to be using for the Modern Beauty block, unfinished, is going to be 12.5 inches. So I have measured this out to be about 14 inches square. I'll talk more about that when I go for placement, but basically it just helps to make sure once everything is sewn that I have an accurate block at the end. So the supplies, in addition to your pieces, you'll need some washable Elmer school glue or other basting glue that is washable that you like to use. I prefer to use the washable Elmer school glue with this fine glue tip, which you can find at purpledaisiesllc.com or SharonShamber.com. They come in packs of 2. You'll also need your printed layout template that you can get from Alyssa at Pile of Fabric. If you are participating in the Skill Builder Block of the Month, she will have the layout templates available for you in a PDF format. I have printed off my layout templates for both blocks to demonstrate the 2 techniques I'm going to be showing for the dark background and for the lighter background. So once you have those ready, you'll also need for the lighter background a square of cotton batting. You will be needing this to be 14 to 15 inches square. It doesn't need to be perfect or even straight cut, just something rough cut. It just needs to be larger than your unfinished block. And as you watch the video, you'll see the reason for that. And preferably to have your layout template printed onto freezer paper. Freezer paper is a great tool, as many quilters can tell and attest. The printer paper is also, the freezer paper is printable. So if you cut your freezer paper legal size or standard letter size, you can run it through your printer. Just be sure you print on the paper side and not the shiny side. The shiny side will be slick and all of your ink will come off. So I will also demonstrate why I'm using freezer paper. So continue to watch and then you'll see how I'm using it and how you can apply that to your layouts. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate how to mark one technique for marking on dark fabric. Dark fabric can be challenging to mark on. Most commonly used are going to be light tables. If you don't have one that you have purchased, you can make one. Otherwise, a lot of students I've had in applique classes will also put the template and their fabric up against a window that is well lit so they can get the sun shining in and illuminate the fabric and the template and be able to see those lines through the background. So that's the challenge with the dark fabric, is not being able to see when we place the dark fabric onto the layout template. It's very difficult to see the lines to know where we're going to be placing our applique pieces. Ideally, of course, this would be pressed, but I will go ahead and continue demonstrating so you can see how this is going to work. So you'll have your dark background nice and pressed and flat. And this is Works great for colors like black, dark maroon, dark brown, anything that is very difficult to see through. And then I have a portion of my Liberty Floral applique template. And these green lines here are what I want to demonstrate the use of. They are actually puffy paint. So I got this suggestion for how to do this from my mom, Sharon Chamber, who is an amazing appliquer, and she develops techniques that that have been changing the world of quilting for many, many years. And this little trick works well for the most part. There are other techniques that you can use for marking on dark fabric, but this is a simple one, and it allows for this to be reusable if you like to make more blocks. You can continue to use this in the same manner. So with the puffy paint, and do make sure it's puffy paint, we want to get that dimension, because what we are essentially going to be doing is make a raised line here, like a relief rubbing, like when we're kids, and or for those of us that are moms and have kids, and the leaves start to fall off of the trees, and they have those wonderful veins that the kids love to rubbings on, or rubbings of any rocks or on the ground. Anything that is raised is what's going to end up showing through on the paper once we do the rubbing. And essentially that's what we are creating here. Think of these as the veins on the leaves that we as kids or our children are doing rubbings of. So you would take your green or any color puffy paint to make sure it's a dimensional or puffy paint, so that when it dries it lifts up off your paper and doesn't dry flat. Glues aren't going to be the best for this because they will dry quite flat. This puffy paint will stay nice and fine and give that raised dimension that we need. So you take your fine, most of these come with this fine tip, and draw and trace around your lines on your template. Allow it to dry completely, because we don't want to ruin your background with tacky or wet paint. Let it dry completely, and then once it's completely dry, you would secure your layout template, and of course we would have two of them attached here, so we have the full flower. You could also do half and then flip it over and do the other half. You would have this secured to your tabletop with pins. You could even use tape. I can pin right to my table here, so I'm going to pin and make sure this is nice and secure. I don't want this shifting around and going anywhere while I'm doing the rubbing portion of it. And then on your background fabric, you would find your center, whatever that might be for you, for the size that you want. So you need to find the center of both, the horizontal and vertical centers. I usually finger press or iron it. You don't need a very sharp crease on this. You want to be able to find your centers easily and be able to line it up. So where my line is here, I'm just going to line this up so that it's nice and centered and I can get the markings I need to get. And this is in place, of course, to you having a light table. As I mentioned, Alyssa on Pile of Fabric has a great technique for this as well, that she'll demonstrate in her tutorial for the Skill Builder Block of the Month. So do visit her and find which one you prefer to use that fits your workstation, that fits the way that you want to work with this. Of course, with this technique, this particular one is not the only way to go. We just want to make sure that you are able to see where to lay those applique pieces if you have a dark background. So everything is nice and secure. It's not going to shift anywhere. And then I'm going to use just a highlighter. It's nice and fat and round. There's no creases or its own markings onto the fabric. So I'm going to just take it and think of this as your crayon that your kids use or you use to do your rubbings when they go to actually make the shapes. You can feel where the paint was. This is right about here. So I'm going to take the side and just start rubbing. And do apply a good amount of pressure because we're trying to make a crease into the fabric so you can see exactly where to lay your applique pieces. Use your fingers to help you keep your fabric from shifting around. And like I mentioned, nice amount of pressure. This is not going to show up if you are very light and gentle with it. You really need to give it a good rub. And I'll show it a little bit closer in a minute. So I can see the lines. I'm going to bring this closer to the camera so you can see it. And once it's all rubbed, you'll know exactly the spots for your applique pieces to go. I'm hoping you can see that. See the part of the circle here on the rubbing and the petals here. You can see the petals pretty well in that half circle. So all it is doing is making that rubbed line. So when you go to place your applique pieces on it, you'll know where to place them. There we go, that's better. You can see that pretty well there. And there's the petals. You do that for your whole block, and then once you have it all done, you'll know the exact spots for your applique pieces. I'll move on to how to use the light background, which in all honesty is much easier. Dark backgrounds, as I said, are challenging, but not impossible. And they do have a wonderful look with your applique when you get it all finished. It really makes it dramatic and gorgeous. Wait till you see Alyssa's blocks if you haven't seen them already. They are beautiful. So we'll move on to how to lay out the pieces onto your light background. So we have that piece of batting. It's just cotton. This is probably warm and natural. It doesn't really matter for this, but cotton is important here. You want to make sure to have it not have any polyester because we will be using this as sort of a pressing surface. And heat on polyester doesn't dissipate as easily as it does with the cotton. So definitely prefer the cotton. And then I have printed my Modern Beauty onto freezer paper. And one thing I love about using freezer paper templates this way, and you can do this with any design that you print off on a PDF that you have to tape together. You know how we all do it. We all get those cute patterns off that are automatic downloads, and we love that immediate gratification. But then we have to tape everything together. So when you print it on a freezer paper, this is fabulous. You would just cut the one side, like I have here, and then line it up, because I'm going to use the properties of the freezer paper because the back is that shiny, waxy side. Just line it up, and we have these alignment marks to make sure everything gets lined up correctly. Maybe kind of hold it in place with your hand or even a pin if you wanted to. I'm just going to give it a couple pins. So it doesn't go anywhere I don't want it to go. And it's on the batting because I'm going to press the freezer paper together and press it to the batting. So stay with me here. I know this is something new and it's a little unusual. Now if you do this with your other designs, you of course don't need to use the batting, but as we are using the iron on our template, it adheres the freezer paper pieces together. So you don't have to tape it. Now they're stuck together with no taping. It's accurate. They're not going to come apart. And it's so much faster than having to tape all of your individual pieces together. I do recommend pressing onto a pressing sheet. I actually use parchment paper the most, especially if you print off on a laser printer like I have, because it will smear. So use your iron to press the templates together and press onto your batting. And now what we're creating here is a pressing and pinnable surface for our applique background and applique pieces. If you don't have a good pressing surface, this is very nice and handy to have. Just make sure it all gets pressed. So now we have this wonderful pressed template to be able to lay our background on. We get our background that we're using, and if I can get a little, yeah, you can see pretty well. See, I can see those lines right through, so I'll know exactly where to place my applique pieces. And then you're going to find this horizontal and vertical center of your fabric. Give it a little finger press. Line it up with the registration marks to find the centers. And then take a couple of straight pins, and then because this is all together, we can pin this, and then you have a secure, portable template, and it's reusable. So if you make more blocks like this, you can continue to have an accurate layout template for those blocks. Just pin it right through the background fabric, the paper, and the batting. Just keep all those layers nice and secure. And now we're ready to go. I can see exactly where all of my pieces need to be laid. Everything is secure. Nothing's going to shift around. And for something comes up, I can easily move this and just go take care of my kids, or just come back to it if I've run out of time. So you can see here, you can really see well the lines through the lighter background. So we'll go ahead and get placing our applique pieces onto our background fabric. Here's where you will need your washable basting glue. As I mentioned, I prefer the washable Elmer's. It is an inexpensive, wonderful product to use for this technique. It washes out completely. It's non-toxic. It's just my favorite. So you can start with pretty much any of the pieces. I tend to like to start from the center and go out. And then for this part of the technique, we have our turned piece here. And you take your washable basting glue, or Elmer's in this case, and you're going to draw a fine line of glue around the outside edge of your applique piece, just like this. See that? You don't need to do dots. It kind of bubbles up a little bit, but I'm not intentionally putting dots. You can see the circles there. Then I'll find my center circle and just line it right up. Lay it where it's going to go in its final spot and give it a heat set. We'll continue that process for the rest of the pieces all the way around. You can set several pieces on before you heat set. You don't have to heat set immediately after every single piece. I like to be efficient, as efficient as I can. So it's nice to be able to place several pieces. There we go. And a light line. You definitely do not need a heavy line of glue. All right, they're all placed. I'm going to give it a final heat set just to secure everything in place. And with this technique for using glue and heat setting to place all of your applique pieces onto your background, you don't need to have pins. Everything's ready to sew. It's nice and flat and looking really lovely. So in the next video, I will demonstrate a sewing technique for how to stitch using the applique foundation as I have in these applique pieces. You can also use the technique for most any applique. I hope you enjoyed this video and found some information that will help you in your appliquing in the future. Thanks so much for joining me. If you have any questions or need any help with anything, please feel free to leave a comment on the video. You're also welcome to visit my blog at so much like mom.com or my website at purpledaisiesllc.com. Thanks again. See you soon.